I think we're all gardeners here for the Gardening Expo. So what we put together today is Cultivating Healthier Communities. And really it's about planting seeds of positive change. And my name is Greg, and I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more on the next slide. But first I wanted to, inside your gift bag, which we encourage you to take home, and these are symbolic gifts. We have a bean seed, because today we're going to plant a lot of seeds of things that could change, things that we can do in our communities to make them healthier. We gave you a really cool Zen-like rake. If you have your own sand garden on your desk, or if you just like to rake for meditative reasons, this is the tool. So we're going to plant some seeds, we're going to use some tools in our communities, and then we're going to talk about what we call the pebble effect. Because really you don't know what the reactions of your small actions are going to be. Like you drop a pebble in a pond and the ripples go and go and go. And none of us know what the course of our life is going to bring or change as we go forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about the pebble effect and our responsibility to try to make small changes that will ultimately add up to big positive changes. So I'm Greg Rowley, and that's my dog, Beauregard. And I've been passionately involved in the sustainability movement in the Chippewa Valley, which is near Eau Claire, for the last 3 years in social change, social justice, and community organizing. Before that, I spent 2 years really getting my personal life together on a sustainability front, doing an alternative energy project at my home, becoming an organic gardener, and doing some other things to get my consumption down. And then starting to work with Sustainable Eau Claire, the Clear Vision community, and Jonah, joining our neighbors Advancing Hope. We started a environmental task force. And all of that's brought me to a place where I feel it's time that we keep working as communities to grow our sustainability and grow the health of our communities. Now I'm going to introduce Brenda.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here and happy to see you here as well. I've been around agriculture and education all my life and chose a career as an agricultural educator and greatly enjoy that profession. One of my sincere passions is to instruct children and encourage children to know where their food comes from and to build an appreciation for those that grow our food. I would also like to introduce Chris Gosman. She is at our booth down at the show, booth number 216. And Chris is married to her husband, and they live on a hobby farm near Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They have a small grape production and also have restored a native prairie. Chris herself is an avid gardener.
This is Chris's backyard and the native prairie lands that she's restored on her property. And before we get into the beans and the tools and the pebbles, really want to talk a little bit about what community is. On an individual level, it's as small as your apartment or your home or just your family, or me and Beauregard. We're a community. He takes over more of my community than I like, but you can also have community on a local level. These are state organizations, regional groups, the 4-H, your faith communities. So community goes farther than just our locality of home. And then really, what we really want to get to in our mindset and our actions is that we're all a global community. The breath that I'm taking now is going to be shared by some other being or some other creature on the planet, because there really is we're a closed loop system. We're all a community eventually. So the things that we do today will impact people tomorrow and for generations to come. So we said, okay, we're going to have a group of gardeners together. So how do we leverage the passion that all of us have, the miracle that we believe in one seed? Because that's really the essence of gardening for me. I get excited about every sprout. And what one seed can do is incredible. So we said, all right, let's try to phrase our community concerns and how do we grow healthier communities using all the passion and the tools that gardeners bring to the table. One of them is world hunger, and we'll talk about that in detail. Obesity. If our obesity rates continue to climb, then we're going to have healthcare issues. Our lifespans are already shortening, and it leads to communities that aren't as healthy as they could be. Nature deficit disorder, and this is something relatively new. It's just gaining scientific backing and scientific studies that have been going on since the mid-90s. And we'll talk about that because we're raising the third generation of people that are technologically removed from nature and urbanization. And we're going to show you the charts and the trends and what's going on in urbanization. And then sustainability. This is a really broad topic. We're not going to go very far into it, but we're going to talk about why we need to bring it back to the forefront of our conversation because it's gone away from the press and from a lot of topics. You know, the whole green movement and the greening of everything that went on up until the financial crisis was great. Now the Arab Spring, the financial crisis, the unemployment rate, and the stagnant politics of Washington has kind of pushed sustainability off to the side. And we haven't seen a lot of progress on that front in the last 2-3 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Brenda, who's going to talk about world hunger.
As we focus in on world hunger, it's important to take a look at some statements. And the first one that I would like to point out to you was by Jeff Simmons. He stated, "No longer is the number of hungry people steadily decreasing. More people than ever are victims of hunger." And when we hear that, it makes us stop and think and contemplate about world hunger. As you can see, we are steadily increasing in our population numbers. Right now we're at 7 billion, and by the projected year of 2040, we're going to be at 9 billion. If we think about this, we have to realize that we need to double our food supplies, according to the experts, in the next 40 years. 40 years seems like a long time, but let's put it into another different perspective. 40 years is really 40 growing seasons. So we have some concerns on the forefront to meet to help deal with population growth and food need. So we have an acre. An acre, as you know, it is 43,560 square feet. As I tell my students that, I need to put that into a more different perspective to help them understand what an acre is, and so it is a little bit larger than a football field. So we have this growing population increasing by 30%, and we have to have the food need to meet the population. So we have an acre, and in order to meet that growing population, our food is going to be produced, and an acre is going to look more like this. With that, we can look at another statement, and I'd like to point out this book here. It's produced by National Geographic, and in it is a statement edited by Irene Salinas. The key challenges we'll be facing in the decades ahead are to continue producing an adequate amount of healthful and nutritional food, and that's really our focus here. So the question is asked, how can you make an impact? So we look at addressing these needs. As individuals, you may well be involved in helping meet world hunger. How can you make differences as an individual? Well, we have our backyard gardens just a few steps away from the house. We have our patio gardens, our indoor gardens. And don't forget about the windowsill. And as a consumer, we can purchase seasonal produce. But more importantly, we can educate ourselves continuously to help make that difference. As we expand our area, we can work locally. And through local initiatives, we can become involved in community gardens, and they are becoming more and more popular. We can establish rooftop gardens, and this is done more frequently in urban areas because our land space is minimized there. School gardens are becoming more popular as well, as we have summer enrichment programs for our students. A CSA, which is a community-supported agriculture, where people invest in the land area to produce the fresh fruits and vegetables, and then they may or may not work with that CSA, but they do gain produce back from those that are produced on that land area. A large stock share is simply investing in a livestock animal and then getting a percentage of that meat back for your home table. And we also, again, in our local areas, can educate people. Looking globally, urban blight reclamation. What's happening in there can be shown in this next slide. In the upper left hand, you have a nice visual of a restoration project being done by those individuals there. And in the bottom right-hand corner is a project that was done in California. And if you look carefully on the bottom left of that photograph, you can see the yellow line from a entrance ramp. Another example of how we are making a difference. Floating garden. This was a unique project being done in New York, and we also have some brochures on it. But it's a science-based project to help bring produce to those areas in the heavily urban area of New York City. This is a closed-loop system. There is no emissions from it. It is solar-powered. It grows the vegetables, such as tomatoes and lettuce, hydroponically, has a compost system. And yes, you can go to New York City and you can have a tour of this. Vertical farming. This is a new concept, and on this next slide, we have a architect-rendered picture of a vertical farm. And so again, this is something used in highly urbanized areas. Some of the renderings out there would be circular in style, where every floor you may grow tomatoes or lettuce, depending on the needs of that community, hydroponically. The largest challenge with this is developing that solar energy for each level of that building. So there's some work to be done, but again, this is a visionary concept. Legislative support, ongoing efforts, and we need to make sure that we are constantly getting our education, knowing the facts, and keep communicating. So the question is asked, when can you act? And the answer to that is today.
So why be concerned about obesity and the effect it's having on children and adults? When you talk about healthy communities and building a healthy planet, a healthy structure for our food, what's happened or has been happening since the 1980s is, as agricultural farming practices and high fructose corn syrup or sugars, all the different carbohydrates that are highly refined now in our foods, we've seen an increase in obesity, really just going from around 1975, 1980. And it's defined by the medical community as a body mass index of over 30. So technically, I'm obese. I am 30 pounds or more overweight for my body size and build. So it's a little bit fuzzy, but the numbers and the trends support that the industrialization of our food and the highly refined aspects of our food are causing long-term healthcare issues. So how can you make an impact? We're going to talk about how you can act locally, how you can act individually, and then how we can act globally. Really is to try to act as a role model. You know, when I started organic gardening 3 or 4 years ago, I weighed more. And the first time I pulled a radish out of the ground that was fresh and I tasted it, it was like, oh my God, this is what a radish tastes like. And now I eat a salad every day. And I still am addicted to sugar, though. I have a sugar addiction, and a lot of us do. We grow up on sodas. most people don't know that sodas have 6 to 10 teaspoons of sugar, every soda that you drink. And every time you pick up a packet of ketchup, and even your milk now has refined sugars in it. So slowly our diets have been changing, and so have our body mass indexes. So you can educate yourself and the young people in your life on how to change your eating habits. And it is a physical addiction as you try to wean yourself off sugar. You get sugar, you want sugar, chocolate. Visit the local farmer's market and really, with young people and yourselves, educate yourselves on what the produce is that's available. Because natural carbohydrates actually are way better for you and make you feel fuller longer. So really on an individual level, it's mostly educating yourself on what refined foods are doing to your body chemistry. What can we do on a local level? Food programs in our communities. The vending machines at our schools. If you can work with your local school board, your local teachers association to change your vending machine contents, to change your sugary soft drinks at your school and replace them with healthy alternatives, you can start to break the cycle in the children, because the sugar thing starts young and then it just keeps going. We can work with Brenda and promote agricultural education, and we promote that at the very lowest level, 3, 4, 5, the Head Start programs, the preschools, all the way through secondary education. Everyone should know where their food comes from and how their body processes on a chemical level food. Because all your life long you're going to ingest food, whether you like it or not. Good or bad, we all got to eat. And then food deserts. This is a concept that became defined by the USDA in the mid-1990s. I'm not really familiar with the Madison area, but I would guess that one of your lower income neighborhoods is on the southwest side of town. Is that true? Because if I look at Gary, Indiana, and I have driven through there, it is definitely a lower income area. The larger blocks are called rural food deserts, and that's where you have to drive more than 10 miles to get low cost, high nutritional value produce. That's how they define it. So what tends to happen in urban areas is that people can't travel conveniently to a grocery store that has healthy food, so they tend to make unhealthy food choices because of convenience. And that's a real simple explanation of what a food desert is. On a global level, sustainable agricultural practices. And really, from our perspective, or my perspective, that's supporting putting the local and the family farm back in business. Most people don't realize that most of the food that you get at even at a produce or a large scale grocery store has traveled 5 to 7, even 10 days to get to you. And when you pick something, the nutritional value starts to fall off very quickly. They'll also pick it before it's ripe and then either add colorizers or agents or something that makes it look good on the shelf to you, but it's really not highly nutritional food. A lot of the nutritional value has gone away during the transportation of the food. So sustainable agricultural practices not only means taking care of the land, but it means bringing the produce and the fresh food back closer to the people that are going to eat it. Because it's not that good for you. It's empty calories if it takes 7 to 10 days before, from the time it's picked before you consume it. Legislative and trade agreements, food taxation. There's a growing movement to tax highly refined sugars. I lived in Canada for 4 years. They taxed the crap out of alcohol. I mean, it costs like $40 for 24 beers. You know, it was ridiculous, right? But they knew that the long-term health effects of consuming alcohol would end up costing in the healthcare system. The long-term effects of a bad diet also cost us in our healthcare, and it doesn't make our communities any healthier. So all these things that help promote and bring healthy, natural food and education to the individuals will help us make our communities healthier. Nature deficit disorder. Like I said, this is something fairly new. One of the best books out right now on it is The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. And he brought together about 10 years of data and studies and empirical evidence and a lot of expert opinion. But what has been happening is the generation, the World War II generation, we'll call them, they grew up with nature. Our rural population worldwide crossed over to more urban than rural in about 2008. And in the U.S., 82% of us now live in urban environments. But 2 generations ago, 40 or 50% of us lived in urban environments, and the other 40 or 50% drove to grandpa's or drove to grandma's farm and had Sunday dinner and was exposed to nature and was out in nature and did things that connected them with nature. That's no longer happening with the generation that's just going up right now, the 5, 6, 10-year-olds. They're growing up on the web. They're growing up wired. And what that is leading to, we'll go back, is once again, it's fueling part of our obesity trends, but also attention deficit disorder. And it's not just children. Adults have a hard time now not multitasking. You know, that 5-second mental chemical hit that you get from checking your BlackBerry, you know, because you do become to that. That new information makes chemical synopsises happen. And anxiety, and it's because we're having a lack of contact with nature. So how can you reverse this trend in your life and then help reverse it in society, especially if you're living in an urban area, because it's difficult. Most of us are overscheduled and we're structured. All of our time is structured. We don't allow for a long walk or just sitting in front of a fish tank. Okay, that sounds silly, but fish tanks and watching fish will lower your blood pressure, your heart rate, and your anxiety way, way more than watching television or sitting on your computer or Facebooking. So get a fish if you can't have a dog or a bird. Right, exactly. And just how they swim around and what they do. And I watched fish for a lot of years when I didn't watch television. Make time for free play and downtime. Just not yoga. Yoga's structured. You know, go out and do something that's just totally spontaneous. You can create a nature sanctuary in or near your home. You can have flowers, you can have plants, a bird feeder, squirrel feeders. If you ever watch 2 squirrels wrestle in your squirrel feeder, it's fun, you know, and it's 10 minutes and it's meditative and it connects you with nature. I already talked about the fish. You saw my dog Beauregard. And beware of the boogeyman fears. The media every day goes out, looks through 7 billion stories. That's how many of us there are, and finds the worst. And they cram them into a half hour and they show you that. That's not what real life is like. Almost all of us are good people and will help each other out when something's going down. But what the boogeyman has done is kept us inside. It's kept us away from our neighbors. It's kept us out of the parks. It's kept us from letting our kids run around because we're afraid of the boogeyman. That doesn't mean that there aren't bad people out there. But it also means that you have to temper that with some sense of what the real challenges are. On a local, support green space creation and renewal. When I say redesign your parks, there was a, you know, from the 60s really up until very recently, parks have been designed with a soccer field, maybe a volleyball area, and a ball diamond. But there's no water gardens, the trees aren't there anymore, there's no free play areas. And really getting in and redesigning our parks in urban areas to have natural and free space play areas. Parents are scheduling play dates. That's a real big thing that's come up in the last 10 or 15 years. I challenge you guys on a local level to schedule your play dates in nature areas. So whole groups of kids go out and play all day outdoors, and the parents are there with them. And then support or join the Audubon Society, your zoo clubs, your butterfly houses. I've done some work in those circles, and it's very much an aging population in these groups. And if we don't start getting people our age, okay, I'm kind of old, 47, people your age, maybe in your 20s, into these groups so that they perpetuate, we're going to continue this nature deficit disorder trend downward. Because once these people stop these groups, they're going to go away. I really think that a world park system is needed. We have national parks, but we don't have a global awareness of preserving large areas of land and having a natural park system that's world-based, that all of us own, because we're a global community. You know, we talk about saving the rainforests, but we don't have everybody has a stake in that, because we all have a stake in it, in that discussion. And then we support more research for this disorder so we can understand more of it as time goes on. Okay, when can you act? You guys know the answer to this one. Today, just being here today, you're taking some kind of action, just taking this information in. Now I'm going to really go through this quickly because we're running short on time. 30% of the Earth is land mass. Not a lot of that is arable land mass. There is no way. You can't throw anything away. It goes somewhere. Everything that you do, everything that you consume affects something. It's a closed system. We can't jettison anything into space yet, but I'm sure people are working on that. So what I try to teach people about sustainability is that if you can think about every decision for 7 generations down the road, about 140 years, then you have a sustainable mindset. And then you're working towards sustainability naturally in your thought process. Just another quick, just to really set it home, this is the next 40 years. We're going to overcrowd our planet. We're going to take up our resources. Oh, I forgot my spork. It's out in the car. Use a spork. Because it's goofy and it's fun, I use a spork. And I've saved about 1,500 plastic forks over the last 4 or 5 years with my spork. I meant it kind of as a joke, but it isn't. I think about 7 generations, so I don't use plastic silverware. I don't use paper plates at home. I wash my plate. I use a spork. I take reusable stuff to eat my lunch at work. The only other one I'm going to touch on here is stay neutral to the politics of the extremes. The gridlock in Washington is based on polarization or extremes. So you have to have racial tolerance. You have to have tolerance for people's sexual status. You also have to have tolerance for their political status. So when you polarize in your beliefs, then you're not willing to do any compromise, you're only working together. And that's why we haven't moved a lot of these initiatives forward, is because we go to the extremes. I encourage you to, guys, sustainable Dane is known throughout the state. They're known throughout the nation. Dane County, Madison, you guys are a bunch of tree huggers. Everybody knows it, and you do a great job at it. But to keep getting involved, to get more involved with your community, and it does take a lot of energy and it does take a lot of time, but it is worth it in the long haul. And buy local. The local Dane program is also famous across the state for how well it's taken off and how many businesses it supports. And you guys should be proud of that here in the Madison area. And then if you don't engage your representatives, then they don't know. They only end up with the extremes. Once again, the common guy is gotten disengaged from the politics because it's a messy business and it's not any fun. But if your representatives don't hear good, solid, well thought out feedback from you, then they only know what the extremes are giving them. And that's the lobbyists on the left and the right. And that ends up with polarization. Again, the question. Hey, you guys are, man, you're a class act. And I'm going to turn it back over to Brenda. We're going to talk about the third thing you got in your bag, which is a pebble.
So a pebble. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to pick up a pebble and toss it into a pool of water. And when you do, you see the ripples move outward, as Greg had mentioned earlier. So each of you can be that difference. We ask ourselves 3 questions. The first one being, where are the resources? Every community is different, and so if you connect with the resources in your community and network, you can pool some very workable solutions together to help meet some of these concerns that we've talked about today. We have to ask ourselves, where do the ideas come from? Well, they can come from ourselves, and they can come from the groups of people where we have our circle of influence. And then we can start making some actions and initiatives that will make positive differences in the lives of others. How are these programs maintained and sustained? We can come up with great projects and put them into action, but then we want them to last and have lasting impacts for others. So here is just a brief scope when we take and we ask ourselves, how can you expand your healthy community? We have a group of student-oriented organizations, and we have a group of adult-oriented organizations, so either channel can help make a difference. So what healthier community programs are currently working in your community? When you ask yourself that, find out and then get connected with them and become involved if you are not already. So who is active in developing your healthier community? Well, guess what? You, because you're here today, looking for information, educating yourself, and getting re-energized to go back to your community and make that difference. So we want to congratulate you. And part of that is your gift bag here that you have to serve as a reminder. As we go about and we work on all of these channels and we have these ideas and we become involved and make that difference, we'd like to remind you to keep a positive mindset, because some of these problems can really create some negative thinking sometimes. And so if we keep a positive mindset, our energy is going to solutions, because it's real easy to focus on the problems, but let's turn that energy and get to some positive thinking about solutions. We can celebrate and appreciate the food that we do have and the ways that we can work to help meet that demand for a growing population. Know the facts. Pay attention to where the facts are coming from and the sources of those facts. We are educating ourselves when we do that, and then we can better educate others. And again, we cannot emphasize enough to keep a positive mindset.
Who's going to get it right today? So, a little bit more about my story. After 3 years in actionism is what I call it, not activism. And there is a difference. The difference is when you're an activist, you're going to tell someone why they should move to your point of view and what's wrong with them. That's activism. And that's polarization, and that's the extremes that tend to happen in our culture, our political systems. Actionism is that you're committed to moving forward with positive change. And you know that that means that compromise, it means that you're not always right, it means that you're that you're going to have to bend and give a little, but in the end, if you're moving towards a common set of goals, then that's actionism. And I did that for a couple years in the Eau Claire area, and then I decided that it wasn't changing fast enough. I had really deep-seated fears about where our race of beings were headed. So I took a different tact. I've been in special custom engineered products manufacturing my whole life. And I also have I'm a whole brain thinker, I call it, and most of you guys here, because Madison attracts whole brain people that work with their right and their left side of their brain. So I created a product because this nature deficit disorder thing really bothered me, and this disconnection that kids were having with nature. So using the tools that I had as an engineer and the creative side of me, I brought this little magical creature named Jerome the Gnome into being, and my garden gnome is also named Jerome, and he's based on this guy here, and brought together a product that is locally produced, because sustainability says that you really need to have your supply chain local, because shipping products all over the world is not a sustainable thing over the long haul for humans. So about 60% of it's made right in the Chippewa Valley. The other 30% or so is made in Minnesota. And then the two little figurines I could not get sourced anywhere but China, which is kind of sad, because that whole toy manufacturing has left the U.S. In North America, it just doesn't even exist anymore. But what we're trying to do with Jerome and his sidekicks and this book is you wake up a magical gnome, and he teaches you all about gardening, composting, sustainability, rainbows, the harvest moon, pollination, and all these little scrolls are gnome knowledge scrolls. And we've put this now in the hands of 2,000 children across the nation. We've donated some, we've sold some, we've used them in daycares. We've come up with an educator's version that an agricultural educator wrote, so that kids spend 6 to 8 weeks growing their own garden, taste their own food, and they fill out at the back of it with these cool stickers, because kids love stickers. They do love stickers. A growing calendar. So as things are happening, they're putting stickers on, they're filling out their own calendar. So I took the passion that I have for sustainability, my desire to be an actionist and not an activist, and created this product. And I still do work with, and we do special events recycling in Eau Claire County. All the events, or most of them that go on there, have recycling sponsored by volunteers now. And we do some other things with Beaver Creek Reserve, with Sustainable Eau Claire. But this product is available if you want to go look at it in booth 216. Because my mission is really to bring the miracle of nature to every child. For me, this was I turned my passion into my night job, as my wife calls it. It's not my day job yet, but I'm working on that. So we're going to open it up for questions after just a few moments of reflection that Brenda's going to give us.
I consider myself a lifelong learner, and this is a book entitled Enough. And out of this book comes this African proverb that states, if you want to go fast, go it alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so our mission really is working together to make that difference.
If you take on your bag home with you, or if you want on the handout that we're giving you, that's on Floating Gardens, I believe. On our website, we're going to post all of this PowerPoint presentation, and the book by Richard Louv will be in that documentation. And then all the charts either came from the Center for Disease Prevention and Control, the U.S. Census, all readily available information off the web, but we did note at the bottom of every chart where we got it from. So our source data is out there. And the whole nature deficit disorder thing it's new. There's no one that's created a pill for it yet. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I'm sure it'll have a lot of side effects. And the pharmaceutical companies will make the 150% profit on each pill, but that is a very troublesome thing to me because I traveled internationally a lot in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I watched what was happening in China and other developing countries with children especially. And as American or Northern American foods were brought into these countries, you could see over a 4 or 5 year period as you traveled in and out of the country that people were getting less healthy just as a result, especially the children, of a diet change, of having fast food, having Kentucky Fried Chicken, having McDonald's. They had never been exposed to it, you know, for thousands of years, and then suddenly overnight it's there. Yeah, there's a study that he cites in his book where children that walk home through a forest have less medication on a broad percentage than children that have to go through a highly urbanized area. It's pretty amazing to me, the effects that nature, but I really did only have a fish tank for years and did not have a television, and it does make a difference. It's pretty amazing. Having a bird or a fish or just a couple plants that you talk to in your home. Well, thank you everyone for listening and coming, and enjoy the rest of the expo.